I don't even follow Cardinals baseball, and I know just how absolutely depressed everyone is right now.
They lost 5 of 6 to the Pirates and the Tigers last week. They fall 4 games under 500. They're hosting the Diamondbacks, the only team in baseball that's absolutely worse than they are right now.
They had a 17-game losing streak at one point. 17!
Yeah. It's I don't even know what to say about that, but you can tell that right now the Cardinals are still kind of at the same level as the D-backs right now because it's the bottom of the 7th. It's a 1-1 game. Dylan Carlson, an RBI triple in the 3rd. Rojas hit a solo home run in the 5th. Wade LeBlanc went 4 in the 3rd, gave up 4 hits, earned run, walked 1, struck out 2, 71 pitches. So decent showing from the bullpen guy in Wade LeBlanc. And right now, Edmundo Sosa just doubled the lead off the bottom of the 7th. And this is the thing about this game, and this is where the frustrations with the Cardinals are at right now. Throughout this game, they have had runners in scoring position, leadoff doubles, first and second, no outs, and they cannot drive anybody home. And that, I think, has been the bane of this team's existence right now. And we're going to talk tomorrow about the guys or the potential reinforcements that are coming up for the Cardinals and maybe some trades that are going down. But when it really comes down to it, you have to look at, is this pitching, hitting, or both? And if it's one of the two, what do you do to rectify that situation?
It's all of the above. It is all of the above. I mean, look, right now, as we are recording this, it is 1-1, and they are taking on a starting pitcher. Well, at least they did. He lasted 4 innings. Jake Faria, who is starting in his first major league game since 2018. He's mainly a reliever. This guy is pretty much Jake from State Farm. And they've only got 1 run against Jake from State Farm, essentially. This is kind of sad.
Still one more run than they got against the guy making his major league debut last night.
Baby steps, okay? Baby steps, okay? Which you shouldn't say that when your hitting coach is the famed Jeff Albert. It's not working. It's not working, bro. I mean, I think before they make a trade, which one trade's not going to fix this ship. This ship's going down this year. I think. I think the Cardinals are pretty much at a point of almost no return here. But if there's a change that they need to make, first and foremost, Jeff Albert, take a hike, because it ain't working. You have Paul Goldschmidt, you have Nolan Arenado, you have even when you look at the starting lineup for tonight's game, for instance, there's not like a guy you look at and say, well, that's a bad hitter. Not really. You have some talented sticks there, and you're not making the use out of them at all. That is, and whenever you have Tommy Edman the other night coming out and saying that we are not prepared, that is on the hitting coach.
Not necessarily, though, because if you listen today, Mark Reynolds came out on ESPN, 101 ESPN. He was interviewed today, and Matt Holliday has also come out and talked about this, that the team has all of the things that you could ever want when it comes to video preparation or any of that. It is on the player to be ready to go for whatever matchup that you're going to have. Yes, it would be better if the team as a whole was able to prepare and kind of make plans. But if you're going to blame preparedness as the reason why you're not hitting, that's a baseless accusation against the team, because you have it in your hands to get the video, to do whatever you want as far as repetition and practice to get yourself prepared to go up against somebody. Okay, that is in the player's hands. And I have no love for Jeff Albert. I think what he's done with the Cardinals and the philosophy is not there, because if you look at it top to bottom, from the majors all the way down to the minors, the hitting system is not right. Every team in the Cardinals organization is under 500, okay, from the top to the bottom. So there's something fundamentally wrong there. But if a player has within his grasp the ability to do the preparation on his own and doesn't do that and says, oh, well, we're not prepared, that is basically saying that the hitting coach isn't doing anything about it, but the player is also saying, screw it, as the Cardinals do take a 2-1 lead on a Dylan Carlson single into center field. So 2-1 Cardinals in the bottom of the 7th.
Talking about everything's fine.
Yeah, okay, they're winning the game. But I do think, I think you're right. I mean, Jeff Albert does have to go. He came from Houston. He was kind of a no-name guy, and he built his reputation on the Houston hitting. Well, what did we find out a couple years ago about the Houston hitting? wasn't necessarily all about the preparedness.
Where's my plastic trash can?
Exactly. So now you look at it and you go, well, really, why was Jeff Albert successful? Who knows? We're not seeing the same sort of success here because they got rid of all the trash cans in the dugout. But at this point, is Mozeliak just basically hanging on to him because he doesn't want to admit the mistake? And that's the thing that we talked a little bit about with Scott earlier today. You'll hear that tomorrow. But Mozeliak does not like to admit his mistakes.
No.
And this is another one of those mistakes that he's not going to admit until it's probably too late, and he's not going to get fired, and the Cardinals are going to go on a run. And there was an article today about the 1978 Cardinals. Is this team a mirror image of that, where they are just going to be terrible, or do we feel like this team can't actually pull out? They are a second half team. Scott's mentioned it in the past. This is a second half team. The last couple of years, they put things together. Can they make a run in a very winnable division, even though they are 8 games out?
Well, one of the things that we did at KMOX right when the pandemic started was we replayed a bunch of games from the 2011 run. When the Cardinals, it looked like they were in the depths of despair, for much of the season. And then they rebound in the second half of the season and, hey, they win a World Series. You're right. They are historically have been a second half team, but I feel that the situation with Jeff Albert kind of, is just another example of why there's one word that you can describe this Cardinals front office, from the owner, down to John Mozeliak, and then even down to the manager's, office, and that is stubborn. This team is stubborn. They don't like change. They don't, and if you are like, if you have to be like when Mike Matheny was let go, he had a prolonged, time in St. Louis where everyone wanted his head. They stuck with him. He was the heir apparent to Tony La Russa. They stuck with him. Finally, they let him go, late in the season. In fact, I think I was there for his last game, and I think, it was. I don't think anyone in the stadium still believed that he was going to be let go before the end of the season. And then as we're going to our cars, we got the announcement that he was let go. This team, this organization needs to be more proactive, because the number one indicator that you're struggling as a franchise is take a look at the crowd and look at all the red seats that are around Busch Stadium. We are coming off a pandemic here. We are coming off a year where fans could not go to the ballpark at all. The smell of the hot dogs, the beer vendors, all of the smells and the sceneries and the sounds of Busch Stadium, we were deprived of that for a year. We can go back now. Full crowd, 100% capacity. We're not there. And it's not because we're afraid of COVID. It's not because, of ticket prices, although ticket prices are a pretty penny. But I think it's just simply because they're not going to pay that pretty penny to go watch the product that we have been getting for the last month. Changes have to be made. Whether it's Jeff Albert, I don't think Mike Shildt. I don't think it's time for him yet. I think he deserves at least the rest of the season. To try to right this ship. And to be fair, I don't think anyone anticipated the Cardinals' starting rotation being this bad. I think we thought that Carlos Martinez would be, a sub-6 ERA pitcher. That too much to ask out of Tsunami now, apparently, which, by the way, I was actually talking about this with Tom Ackerman, Wags. Can you remember in recent memory a bigger Cardinals waste of talent than Carlos Martinez?
Oh my God. Like a homegrown talent?
Like a homegrown talent, a guy that was a member of the Cardinals that was going to be a franchise guy, and he just completely pissed it away.
I mean, I don't think you can really say anything along those lines. I mean, I think you look at a guy like an Alan Craig, a guy that kind of burst onto the scene that maybe not necessarily superstar level, but did have a potential to be a secondary piece to an Albert Pujols. You could say maybe, but I don't think it's as big.
I think Craig was an overachiever.
He probably was. So, I mean, you look at that. I mean, there's a couple of guys that were overachievers. Hector Luna was another guy that was a Rule 5 guy that maybe had a chance, but nothing to the extent of the, I guess, talent level, expectations, and projections Carlos has been a guy that's been a baby Pedro in a sense. People thought Pedro Martinez-esque type of player, and we're seeing the same thing with Alex Reyes as well, another guy that could be a Pedro Martinez type of pitcher. And he's just basically pissed it away. And he's had moments, and he's had a lot of missteps. And you look at it, and you look at the Oscar Taveras death, and I'm not to sit there and say that was the moment that everything turned poorly for Carlos, because there were moments before that, but having someone that maybe you were mentoring and bringing alongside and saying, hey, I got you under my wing, having somebody that loses their life that early in a tragic accident like that maybe changes somebody and maybe makes them go into maybe a bit of a depression or something of that nature. And then you have a manager like Mike Matheny, who's here, that maybe just doesn't understand the culture and things around that. And all of that kind of was a perfect storm in Tsunami's case in a sense. And it's kind of spiraled downhill, and maybe a change of scenery is what Carlos needs. And I do wish him nothing but success if he goes somewhere, but I don't know if that's even going to be the case. And it kind of takes me back to the question I was going to ask you a little earlier when we were talking about managers. Do you think the Cardinals made a mistake in passing on Jose Oquendo for Mike Matheny?
Yeah. I think at the time it was the right move going with Matheny. I mean, Matheny had a reputation for being a very smart guy, and he was one of the most respected catchers around the league. I mean, he was a supreme defensive catcher, in his time. But I think at the time Matheny was groomed to be the heir apparent, as I mentioned. It seemed like that was the path that they were always going to go. I can understand if you're Jose Oquendo being miffed by that, because I remember during that time period a lot was coming out about how instrumental Oquendo was, for the team. Whether he was a base coach or a bench coach, he had a lot of influence on guys like Yachty and Albert Pujols back then. And who knows, if they did go with Oquendo, maybe Oquendo's still managing the Cardinals today. That is an interesting question, but again, that's with hindsight.
Oh yeah,
I think, but at the time, if you were to tell me should they go with Matheny or Oquendo, I would have said Matheny.
See,
I was Matheny, and I would have ate my words later.
Completely opposite for me, because Matheny, zero managerial experience, zero. And yes, at the time, the rage was all about getting former catchers or former players with zero managerial experience into the leadership role. Jose Oquendo was a manager of Puerto Rico for multiple instances. He had managerial experience. He had experience with the likes of Molina and Pujols and guys like Ortiz. I mean, just a bunch of star players. And then you look at the makeup of that clubhouse. I mean, there was definitely a Latin feel to that clubhouse. So instead of having somebody that could really relate and kind of shape and mold, especially some of the younger players like a Carlos, like an Oscar Taveras, and you're throwing a guy that's essentially Tony La Russa light. And even at the end of La Russa's time here, you could still feel a little bit of tension in the clubhouse with La Russa. Well, you continued to have that with Mike Matheny. You saw why Jason Hayward left. You saw the issues that Dexter Fowler here had in St. Louis with Mike Matheny. I'm not saying that racism or anything was involved in it, but there was just a different culture that Matheny kind of continued with La Russa. And I think if you would have had Oquendo here with the relationships that he had, and Matheny's relationship with Molina is great. Don't get me wrong. He mentored Molina. They were good people on the diamond. They great teammates and all of that. But having a guy like Oquendo be the manager probably was the absolute right call in that situation. And I just think the Cardinals didn't want to take that leap. And you can see now that Oquendo is now not really a part of the organization. He's a roving instructor down in Florida, essentially. And now he has nothing to do with the major league team. And that's a bit of a disappointment.
Why do you think it is that Oquendo hasn't latched on somewhere else?
Because I think the Cardinals still somehow have this hold on him to where they're not going to release him to interview for jobs. I also think that after he didn't get the Cardinals job, I think being a manager has kind of become secondary to him. He probably wanted to be the Cardinals manager, and that's all. And if he didn't get it, then he was going to move on with his career in a sense. And yeah, he did have knee surgery a couple of years ago and definitely took a step back. But I think in my mind, Oquendo thought it was going to be the Cardinals or it's going to be nobody, because it's where I've been. It's what I know. And if I don't get an opportunity with a team that I've been with for so long, I don't know if I want to spend more time pursuing it with another team. Now, I, once again, could be totally off base on that, but I just think he's at a point where he's where he likes to be, and he does not want to go any further.
And he's probably being taken care of by the team. You know,
Oh,
I mean,
most definitely, yeah.
You know he is. I mean, he's been, you know, he's almost kind of hit the Red Shandiest, you know, status in terms of just duration with the team. I mean, so you might be onto something with that fact. He just simply didn't want to manage anyone else. You know, and then you have sports talk shows like ours wondering what could have been.
Hey, it's U-Man here from Casey. For all your sports news, catch the Toasted Tavern with Scott Tobin and the Man Called Wags, weeknights at 9 p.m. You can follow Toasted Tavern on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Let's get toasted.